U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff arrives in Doha for Gaza ceasefire talks. Israeli Defense Minister confirms indefinite military presence in Syria. And Ukraine accepts a 30-day ceasefire proposal. Good morning, and it's 10 a.m. Cairo local time, and you're watching Qnews, and I'm Salma Al-Fi'i. We begin today's bulletin with the latest developments in Gaza. And Egypt has strongly condemned Israel's decision to cut electricity to Gaza, calling it a blatant violation of international humanitarian law and the Fourth Geneva Convention. In a statement, Egypt's foreign ministry rejected Israel's policy of collective punishment, including blocking humanitarian aid, warning it worsens the crisis. Egypt urged the international community to take immediate action and hold Israel accountable for its ongoing violations. According to Axios, U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff has arrived in Doha. Witkoff will take part in negotiations aimed at securing a ceasefire in Gaza. His visit underscores Washington's ongoing diplomatic efforts to mediate an end to the war on Gaza.
We have now to coordinate a meeting with the Ukrainians in Riyadh or even potentially.
The Palestinian presidency has denounced Hamas's unauthorized communications with foreign entities, deeming them disruptive to the Palestinian stance. It emphasized that such actions violate Palestinian law, which prohibits contact with foreign parties. Earlier, the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated that the direct meetings between President Trump's special envoy for and Hamas about the release of Gaza not yielded results so far. Bowler confirmed that he met with Hamas and stated more meetings could occur if sufficient progress is made. Hamas stated that the closure of crossings and restriction on heavy equipment hinder recovery and reconstruction efforts in Gaza. Hamas also noted the closure violates the ceasefire agreement, which mandates unrestricted aid access. That comes after Israel halted aid into Gaza, raising fears of Yemen. And the UNRWA Commissioner General Philippe Lazzarini has reaffirmed the agency's dedication to its mission amid growing political pressure and worsening humanitarian conditions. To the UN missions in Geneva, Lazzarini called for international support to maintain essential services for Palestinian refugees. He condemned Israel's blockade on Gaza, expressed concern over the displacement of 40,000 refugees in the West Bank, and warned about disinformation campaigns targeting the UNRWA. And moving on to Beirut, where Axios has reported, citing a U.S. official, that Israel and Lebanon have agreed to begin negotiations to resolve their border disputes. The official further stated that as part of the understanding, Israel released 5 Lebanese detainees captured during military operations last year. Since the ceasefire agreement came into effect on November the 27th, 2024, Israel has violated it 1,091 times, resulting in 84 deaths and 284 injuries, according to the Lebanese official data. And now we move on to the latest developments in Syria. Defense Minister Katz, during a visit to Jabal al-Sheikh, has confirmed that the military is preparing for an indefinite presence in Syria. Katz emphasized that the safe zone in southern Syria would be demilitarized. Earlier, Israel reported airstrikes on military facilities and weapon sites in southern Syria, targeting radars and surveillance equipment. And the U.S. announced that the government and the Syrian Democratic Forces to integrate the latter into the institutions of the Syrian Arab Republic. In a statement on the State Department's website, Rubio emphasized U.S. support for a political transition leading to credible, non-sectarian governance in Syria and expressed concern over recent violent incidents.
Quickly whether this is a real thing or whether this is an effort to buy time. But I don't want to prejudge that. I don't want to.
The Kremlin has stated that it desires a unified and friendly Syria, as instability there could have repercussions across the entire region. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov emphasized that the region is highly volatile and any instability in one countries could lead to catastrophic consequences for the entire area. He reiterated Russia's ongoing communication with other nations regarding the situation in Syria, especially following the recent violence. And South Korea's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has announced that the country has reached a preliminary agreement to establish diplomatic relations with Syria's transitional government. This move makes Syria the only UN member state with which South Korea does not have ties. The ministry confirmed that it is moving forward with the fundamental principle of diplomatic relations with Syria. South Korea plans to formalize this policy by submitting a proposal to the cabinet soon. And we now move to the latest developments in the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has announced that the Ukraine has accepted Washington's proposal for a complete 3-day ceasefire. Zelensky added that the proposal covers the frontline air and naval operations. He emphasized that Ukraine is ready for peace and called on Russia to demonstrate its willingness to end the conflict. U.S. President Donald Trump has stated that the United States hopes Russia will agree to a ceasefire. Trump highlighted that his country wants to end the conflict in Ukraine. He further added that he would invite Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky back to the White House. and that the plans to meet with Russia soon, hoping to achieve a comprehensive and lasting ceasefire between the two countries. In response, the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has stated that talks with U.S. representatives could occur in the coming days.
Big commitment from the United States, and we appreciate you very much. And we will continue to do that. We have had
security. When we speak about security guarantees,
the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has stated that Russia is open to discussions on resolving the Ukraine crisis with those offering help. In a press conference with the Secretary General of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, Lavrov confirmed Russian President Putin's willingness for talks based on specific principles. The OSCE Secretary General highlighted the organization's role in cooperation and ending the war, expressing support for all efforts to resolve the conflict. And French President Emmanuel Macron has welcomed Ukraine's approval of a 30-day ceasefire proposal, stating that it's now up to Russia to end the conflict. And in a statement on X, he reaffirmed France's commitment to lasting peace with strong security guarantees for Ukraine. And meanwhile, the U.S. President Donald Trump announced upcoming U.S.-Russia talks, expressing hope that Moscow would accept a ceasefire plan and that full peace would be reached soon.
Que je viens de rappeler en sont la preuve. Ces gens-là n'ont pas suivi l'actualité, manifestement. Et une grande nation, elle n'a pas à choisir, elle a à répondre. Et elle n'a pas à...
Saudi Arabia and Ukraine have emphasized the need for maximum effort to achieve a fair, lasting and comprehensive peace regarding the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. And in a joint statement during Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky's visit to Jeddah, they highlighted the importance of respecting internationally recognized sovereignty and borders to end the negative impact on global security and stability. Both sides discussed ongoing developments, exchanged views on regional and international issues, and committed to further cooperation and coordination. And the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has departed Saudi Arabia's Jeddah on March the 12th after meeting with a high-level Ukrainian delegation alongside National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. And Rubio is en route to Canada for the G7 Foreign Ministers meeting held in Quebec from March the 14th to the 16th. This marks the first such meeting since the U.S. President Donald Trump assumed office amidst tensions over his approach to the Russia and Ukraine. And in Washington, the White House has confirmed that the U.S. President Donald Trump will meet the NATO Secretary General tomorrow. It also emphasized securing borders and implementing immediate deportations of illegal immigrants, continuing the country's largest ever mass deportation. Additionally, the White House stated that the U.S. globalization policies have ended and labeled the recent U.S.-Ukrainian talks in Saudi Arabia as positive. Furthermore, it affirmed that Canadians would gain economically and militarily if Canada became the 51st state. Trump, who also welcomed the Irish Prime Minister to the White House on March the 12th. And in Paris, the French President Emmanuel Macron has met army chiefs from EU allies to discuss enhancing the EU's defense capabilities amid the ongoing Ukraine conflict. The meeting took place during the Paris Defense Strategy Forum. Additionally, EU finance ministers began talks on March the 10th about funding defense through new joint borrowing existing EU funds and a larger role for the European Investment Bank, with decisions expected by June. And moving on to Tehran, where the UN Security Council is holding a special session on Iran today, focusing on its nuclear program, and requested by France, Greece, Panama, South Korea, the UK and the US. The meeting follows concerns over Iran's Iran's increased uranium enrichment. UN Assistant Secretary General Mohammad Khalid al-Khayari is expected to brief members. Unlike public consultations, these closed-door sessions are official meetings allowing participation from non-member states and relevant officials.
Briefing
and now we move on to Rehem Morsi in our newsroom.
Thank you so much, Salma. And now we move on to the economic, business and financial news. We'll find out the latest here on Qnews. Trump's tariffs on all U.S. steel and aluminum imports take effect on Wednesday, escalating his campaign to reshape global trade in favor of the United States. The tariffs restore a 25% global duty on steel and aluminum and extend to hundreds of products derived from these metals, including bolts, bulldozers, blades, and soda cans. Canada, the UK, and Australia condemn the move, with Canada considering reciprocal action. However, the Australian Prime Minister criticised the tariffs as unjustified while ruling out reciprocal measures. Canadian Energy Minister Jonathan Wilkinson has stated that Canada will respond shortly to any tariffs from the US and emphasised that the country was not looking to escalate trade tensions. He clarified that Canada does not view itself as a competitor to the US, despite White House comments. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump reversed his decision to double tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, backtracking after the Canadian official also abandoned plans for a 25% surcharge on electricity.
So, in order to displace Canadian crude from those refineries, you would base
The European Commission has announced that the European Union will impose counter tariffs on $28 billion worth of U.S. goods starting next month. This is in retaliation to the U.S. implementing 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. The EU will lift its suspension of U.S. tariffs on April 1st and introduce new countermeasures by mid-April, targeting products like boats, bourbon, and motorbikes. The EU aims to ensure its measures correspond to the increased trade value impacted by the U.S. tariffs.
Nobody needs that on both sides, neither in the European Union nor.
Australia will not impose retaliatory tariffs on the US. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese confirmed on March 12th, despite U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to enforce 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. Albanese called the U.S. move unjustified and detrimental to their strong economic relationship. He argued that imposing tariffs could hurt Australian consumers and lead to higher inflation, noting that steel and aluminum exports make up less than 0.2% of Australia's annual exports to the U.S.
Escalating trade tensions are a form of economic self-harm.
Britain will not impose retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. duties on steel and aluminum imports, according to a official. While the European Union plans to retaliate with countermeasures against the 25% U.S. tariffs, the British official stated that the UK would focus on negotiations with the US to seek an exemption instead of imposing its own tariffs. US President Donald Trump has stated that he is likely to reduce recently increased tariffs on Canada after Ontario suspended a surcharge on electricity exports to the US. At the White House, Trump explained his decision to raise tariffs, emphasizing that it was necessary to revive American jobs and factories. He also dismissed concerns over market fluctuations, suggesting that they would stabilize over time.
A lot of people didn't think of. He'd come in with bigger ideas.
Germany's Deutsche Börse will launch cryptocurrency custody and settlement services for institutional clients starting next month. The service will enable the settlement and holding of crypto assets like Bitcoin and Ether through Clearstream, Deutsche Börse's settlement arm. This move expands the exchange's crypto offering following its introduction of a crypto trading platform for institutional investors last year. China has led global electric vehicle purchases again in February, despite European Union tariffs on Chinese-made EVs affecting some brands. According to the research, overall sales of both battery electric and plug-in hybrid vehicles increased by 49% year-on-year, reaching 1.2 million units. However, the researchers noted that the sales figures were skewed by the timing of the Chinese New Year. Total Energy's CEO has anticipated that the liquefied natural gas prices to soften by the end of the decade. During the Zero-Week Energy Conference in Houston on Tuesday, Total Energy's CEO provided insight into the future market trends and expectations for LNG pricing. Now we go back to San Mafi in our studio.
Thank you, Riham. And that brings us to the end of our news bulletin, and here's what we have been covering. U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff arrives in Doha for Gaza ceasefire talks. Israeli Defense Minister confirms indefinite military presence in Syria. And Ukraine accepts a 30-day ceasefire proposal. And this concludes our news bulletin for the hour. And don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. And thank you for watching. For more on Qnews.